All right. So while we realize that most, if not all of you attending are parents, we'll be speaking directly to your teens and young adults. So feel free to invite them now if they are free, or encourage them to listen to the recording when it's available. We also value your feedback, and you'll receive a survey at the end that we would greatly appreciate it if you would fill that out. So hello and welcome again. Thank you for attending our webinar, Money Concepts for Teens and Young Adults. My name is Dawn Watson, and I am a Partner Experience Manager at GreenPath Financial Wellness. I have been with GreenPath for 29 years, spending most of my time working directly with the individuals contacting us for assistance in our client services department as a financial wellness expert. So I'm also, again, joined by Bill Folks. Bill, if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dawn. Yes, my name is Bill Folks. I am also a Partner Experience Manager here with GreenPath. I've been with GreenPath since 2008. I started out as a financial wellness expert, or as we called them back then, a counselor. And I've been with the Partner Experience team since 2015. And I enjoy being able to work directly with consumers to help them reach their version of financial goal. And we're looking forward to this webinar today.
So for those that are not familiar with GreenPath, we are a nonprofit financial counseling and educational organization. Our headquarters are located in Farmington Hills, Michigan, and we are licensed to serve people in all 50 states. GreenPath has been helping individuals on their path to financial wellness for nearly 60 years.
Yes, and we are financial wellness experts, and we talk with people every day about the money choices they have made or are about to make with their credit, debt, and money. We ultimately seek to identify realistic options so that our clients can make the best decisions and choices possible based on their situation. Every counseling session starts with determining each individual's goals and ends with an action plan to reach those goals.
So today, we will discuss the financial topic that matters to individuals as they journey through high school, college, and beyond. And here's a little outline of what to expect today. So we're going to address the first job. What will that first paycheck look like? Big decisions, college, trade school, getting a full-time job, paying for college. Can it be done without going broke? Your college years, can you afford more than just ramen noodles? Entering the workforce, more income, but more financial responsibility, and establishing credit. How to use your credit as an asset.
Thank you. So when you were in high school, it's exciting to think about the future, things such as having a full-time job, earning a real paycheck, and having a place of your own. When we're younger, you usually have more wiggle room to make mistakes. For instance, if you spend all of your money, you probably still have support from your family. It's okay to make mistakes. In fact, the lessons we learn can serve as inspiration for the future.
Yep, and we just sent out a poll. I'm just curious how many people feel that those decisions that we're making now do matter. If you don't mind responding to the poll, that would be great. And definitely, it is important to talk with our young adults or our teenagers about it. I can relate. I have a daughter. Actually, I have 3 children. My daughter is my oldest, and back when she was in high school, she was working a job, just a little part-time job, earning some money. She opened her first checking account, and she would, manage it on her own. We didn't have any part of it other than just talking with her about the basics. One day she reached out to me, and she was really, really upset. And she's like, Mom, I was saving, I was putting the money away, and I just didn't pay attention and realize how much I was using my debit card that I got, and I spent all my money. And it was really a devastating experience, but probably not necessarily a bad one at that moment, because now she is so financially savvy and a little, penny pincher and saves her money. But it was a really hard lesson for her to learn at that point in time. So it looks like we have received a few answers, and resoundingly, the majority of people say yes, they do feel that those decisions are going to be impacting them on a long-term basis, and they matter. So thank you for that. So you just started your first job. You're just starting to search online. You're talking with friends and family, turned in multiple job applications, gone on several interviews, and now you finally have landed it. It can be pretty exciting making money, making plans to spend that money, having some financial independence from your parents. Let's take a look at some of the basics like your paycheck. So your first 2 weeks of work are over and your boss just handed you an envelope. And when you open it, you might be in for a little bit of a shock. In your mind, you might have calculated if I earn $15 an hour and I worked 20 hours, then my check should be $300. But for some reason, the check is far less than that. Before you go to your boss and complain or come to your parents, let's clear up some things. The amount of money that you can actually cash your check for is called the net pay, which is your gross pay, that's $300, minus any deductions. A deduction is any money taken out of your paycheck to pay for employment benefits and taxes. Taxes that can be subtracted from your gross pay could include your federal, state, Social Security, Medicare tax, and then for some people also a city tax. At this point in your working career, I mean, you're most likely not paying for other deductions, but later on you might expect to have some of the following items from your paycheck. Some of those common items would be like your health and dental, hopefully saving into a retirement account, possibly disability insurances. So once you've taken all of those deductions into account, you'll find that your net pay may be only 70–80% of your gross pay. So now let's turn our attention to managing that 70 to 80% the best way that you can.
Right, so as you budget, having a checking account is going to make it a whole lot easier to manage your expenses, and it'll allow you to avoid having to carry too much cash. If you haven't opened a checking account yet, this may be a good time to consider doing so. Many banks and credit unions have free and low-fee accounts specifically designed for students. It may be a good idea to have one or both of your parents on the account so they can deposit money for you in the event of emergency, such as what Dawn just explained about her daughter. Most banks and credit unions also have free online banking apps and mobile alerts to help you. Having a checking account is a big responsibility, and it's a great way to establish a relationship with a financial institution. In order to know how much of your paycheck you should deposit versus how much you should spend, it helps to have some financial goals. Goals can be broken up into long-term goals. An example of a short-term goal would be something like saving money for a tablet at the end of the summer, or for that new gaming system. And that's a goal you can usually a month. Long-term goals are something that could take longer to accomplish, more than a year or more. And that could be anything from saving for a new car, for college, or even saving for retirement. A savings account makes it easier to reach those goals. If you don't have a savings account yet, consider opening one. Most banks and credit unions offer special accounts just for teens.
So in order to accomplish your goals, you're also going to want to make sure that they're SMART goals. So what is a SMART goal? It needs to be specific. That is what you're trying to do, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to accomplish it. Make sure it's measurable. Determine how you can actually measure the progress. Are you going to be tracking it in your savings account? What is your plan? Attainable. Good goals should be challenging but not impossible. Don't get frustrated that you aren't reaching the goal by making it too hard or challenging. Make sure it's realistic or relevant. The goal should be something that really matters to you so that you can actually continue following through with it. And then timely. Set a time frame to accomplish the goal and help you keep focused. So an example would be, I'm going to set aside $67 from each biweekly paycheck starting June 1st so that I have $400 by September to buy a tablet when they go on sale. So if you're going to try to set aside a certain amount per paycheck, consider creating a budget. A budget is essentially money in versus money out. Some typical expenses would include money for your goals, savings, gas money, food money, cell phone money, entertainment, clothing, some different things that you're going to be responsible for. Now, keep in mind that the money in doesn't have to come strictly from your job. This could also include money that you get from an allowance, odd jobs, maybe gifts. When creating your budget, make sure to get your parents' input as well. Now that you are working, they may have certain expectations about which expenses you will need to cover. So keep in mind also the consistency of the source. So if it's something that you don't get regularly, you want to be cautious about including that into your income for budgeting purposes. So once you determine your income and your expenses, you'll need to make sure you're on track with your spending. Have you ever had a lot of cash one moment and then a few days later or even a few hours later, it disappears and you're left to wonder, where did it go? Tracking what you spend your money on will help you decide if your spending is in line with your goals and your plan. Remember, if your income or expenses change, you will need to revise your budget. some people like using a simple notebook to keep a diary of sorts to track their spending, but you could also look at technology. There are many free apps that make it easier to track your spending. So if you just go to your app store, search for Expense Manager, you're going to see dozens of options to choose from. So let's take a moment to take an example of a student trying to follow a budget. So this student takes home $230 a month. It's enough to pay a cell phone bill of $25, car insurance of $100, put money in the savings, goal of 10%, $23, and has $82 left over for going out with his friends, food and gas. So in the middle of the month, and he's spent most of his entertainment money, and he has now $29 left, but only $4 of that is left for entertainment. He still needs to pay his cell phone bill. So what if his friends asked him to join them for a movie, and that movie is going to cost $12? Think about what would you do, or what would you recommend? Hopefully, he'd realize this would be a bad idea, since spending $12 now would leave him short when it comes to actually paying that cell phone bill. And every day, you're going to encounter decisions on what to do with your money.
Buyer's remorse is real. That's when you buy something and then regret it later on. I have a personal story about that. When I was 21, I bought a brand new car. And I mean, it was brand new. It had less than 100 miles on it when I got it. I was only working part-time at the time, so I was denied for the loan when I applied for it with my credit union. I did some quick math, and I realized that I could actually easily afford the car payment. So undeterred, I went out and I kept applying at banks until one approved me. My problem is I never took into account the auto insurance. It never occurred to me that auto insurance could be anywhere near as much as my car payment was. Well, I live in Detroit, and Detroit has some of the highest auto insurance rates in the nation. In my case, my auto insurance was actually more than the car payment was. The first year I owned that car, nearly every dollar I earned went to support that car payment. After about a year, my hours picked up at work, and it became a lot more manageable. I actually paid off the car in time, actually a few months early. But if I had taken into account all of the other costs, I would not have bought a brand new car when I was just 21 and I was working part-time.
Yeah, and Bill, that's so true to keep in mind. You know, I had something that kind of similarly worked out as what you were feeling. Back when my husband and I were early in our marriage, he wanted to purchase a truck. And we had shopped, and our budget was pretty limited, so we had to either decide we were going to get something that maybe we really didn't want. Actually, it was going to be a 6-shift truck, or if we were going to wait. And he was so gung-ho. He just wanted to get that. And we were like literally on our way down to the dealership to sign the documents. And I'm saying to him, this does not feel right. You know, we are going to be really disappointed if we do this. Why don't we just wait? I can tell you, he was so frustrated with me. But we waited. And a couple of years later, we were able to buy exactly what we wanted. And we were so happy that we had made that decision to wait. In the heat of the moment, it didn't feel like it. But after the fact, we definitely were.
So we've seen how spending impulsively can destroy a budget, even when it looks good on paper. One way to avoid this, destroying your budget, is to avoid impulsive spending. And one way to do that might be to think about what you're buying ahead of time. Maybe carry less cash when you go out, or if you buy a big ticket item like the truck that Dawn avoided buying, or the car that I bought. Never buy an item like that unless you sleep on it first, and unless you consider all of the factors that's going to go into it. As we think about that and as we move on, I want to get some ideas from you guys about what are some of the other ways that you have to control the urge to spend. And you can put those answers in the chat box, and as we get those answers in, we'll share some of them out. But as we move on, the daily, sorry.
I was going to say, thanks, Bill. I just wanted to let you know that we did put a poll question out about whether or not you've regretted something. And again, resoundingly, yes, everybody has said that at some point in their life, they have done something that they had regretted purchasing at a later point in time.
Thank you, Dawn. I almost skipped over that. So as we move on, the daily decisions you make about where you spend your money may seem insignificant compared to large decisions on your horizon, such as what do you do after school. You can either enter the workforce full-time, or you can go to a 2-year community college, which is what I did before I transferred to a 4-year school. You may be thinking of attending a trade school or going straight to 4-year college. For those that may not be heading to school right now, it also is still it's still nice to think about your options in case you decide to attend at some point in the future. Planning for college is not a one-time event. It could be a long process, but the sooner you start planning, the better. So let's take a few moments a little bit more to think about moving out before going to college.
All right. It looks like we have some chats coming through about ways that they are, trying to avoid those regrettable decisions and spending. So it looks like, somebody put in here that they put in their cart the item and then they wait 24 hours before they check out, giving them to decide if they really, really need it. That's a great idea. Some people say they wait 3 days beyond payday to make sure that the checking account is in good standing. Some people are saying that, they don't go to the store and buy something if they haven't already put it on their list. So there's some really good answers that are coming in here. So keep them coming and we'll keep them sharing out for sure.
Great.
All right. So let's move on to the next slide. There are many choices that impact college costs. In-state schools can be much more affordable than out-of-state schools. Public colleges and universities receive funds from the state which they're located, and those tax dollars help to offset the cost of tuition for students who live in-state. Living off campus is usually less expensive than living on campus, but keep in mind that some universities won't allow freshmen to live off campus. If you choose to attend a community college for 2 years, tuition can be cut significantly. And while the college experience at a 4-year college is something to consider, so are the additional years of paying back your student loans. So now let's talk about paying for college. So if you haven't already, you'll want to talk with your family about how you're going to pay for college. Do you have a college fund? If so, find out how much you have and what the rules are for using this money. For example, some plans require you to go to school in-state, while others allow you to use the money to pay for off-campus housing. There are 529 plans. That's a college savings plan that can have some tax advantages. So if you have that, talk with your investment professional about this. Also, if you want to start one, starting early is better so that you can have that money saved and set aside for that. So if you're among the 70% of individuals or students that have to opt to take student loans, the loan choices can definitely seem rather overwhelming. So let's spend some time reviewing the features of different loan programs. To get any type of grant or student loan, you're going to need to fill out the free application for federal student aid, otherwise known as FAFSA. So the FAFSA actually is going to open up tomorrow. October 1st of every year is when you can start filling that out. And that would be in the senior year of high school and then any year that you're in college that you're going to be taking out financial aid. Financial aid some financial aid does run out, and those individuals that wait to apply, the later applicants who may be eligible, still might be denied due to lack of availability. The eligibility is good for one academic year, which is going to run July 1st through June 30th. So you'll fill out the renewal FAFSA each year you attend school. And you can find the FAFSA at fafsa.ed.gov. And you and your parents will need to disclose financial information to complete that form. Once the FAFSA has been processed, you'll receive a student aid report, or a SAR. And the SAR verifies the information that you provided on the FAFSA is complete, and it also lists the expected family contribution. When the officials evaluate the finances, they take into consideration a number of factors, including parental and student income and assets, the number of family members in college, and how far away their parents are from retirement. This data is then used to determine how much your parents are expected to contribute. The need that is calculated as the difference between the expected contribution and the cost of the college that you are considering. This number is critical because it is used to determine your eligibility for many grants, scholarships, loans, and other financial aid. Once the FAFSA has been sent to the school you apply to, their financial aid office determines what type of aid package they can put together for you. The financial aid officer can discuss with you all of the details associated with their aid evaluation. And each school that you apply to may offer a different package based on the cost and availability of funds. And that I can attest to. My son, my youngest, just graduated, and we filled out the FAFSA, last October, and he applied to 4 different in-state schools, and each and every one of them gave him a different offer. So, you may qualify, for a substantial aid at an expensive private college, but may not qualify for any aid at a less costly state university. So definitely make sure you're reviewing those carefully. So subsidized loans are for students who meet a financial needs test. The government pays all of the interest costs on the amount that you borrow while you're in school, and the interest rate offered changes each academic year, but once you take out the loan, the rate will not change. Unsubsidized loans are for students who do not meet a financial needs test or who need to supplement subsidized loans. So interest will accrue while you're in school. When you're in repayment, the interest rates on unsubsidized loans are the same as subsidized. Parent Plus loans are taken out by your parent or your guardian. So a credit-worthy parent may borrow up to the total cost of college attendance minus any other aid that you receive. The program is available to parents at all income levels regardless of need. The interest rate on the Plus loans will be higher than the subsidized and unsubsidized loans, and there are additional origination fees applying to those. Finally, there are private loans. These are originated by a private lender and do not include the benefits and protections available with the federal loans. Interest rates, fees, repayment terms, and benefits are determined by the financial institution and may vary greatly. Because of this, you should exhaust all federal student loan options before applying for the private ones, and make sure you understand what those terms are and that you're comfortable with them.
All right, so now that your loan options are clear, for it a little bit. You pick your way to pay for it, and now you're on campus. If your parents are helping you with some of your expenses, you contribute. If your parents are not able to help you financially, you still have options. Are you going to work during the summer? If you are, or if you did, perhaps you could put money aside to help you during the school year. Will you have grant or scholarship awards that help pay for some of your expenses? Can you get a part-time job during school? If you do opt to work, sure you don't overdo it, especially if you're taking a full load of classes. Wherever your income comes from, you will continue to have many spending choices ahead of you. You will want to create a budget just like you did when you were in high school and determine how much of your money you're going to save and how much you're going to spend and where that money is going. You may also have some new expenses like food outside of your meal plan, books, and school supplies.
So let's fast forward again. You're now ready to enter the workforce after college.
Right, so this can be an exciting time for sure. Finding a full-time job and moving out on your own are things we dream about during our high school years. However, this can be tricky financially. If you're earning a full-time wage, you may have student loans or other expenses. It may be tempting to move out on your own once you've started to work full-time, but if you work to caution, be sure to map out all of your expenses before signing a rental agreement. To consider include rent, utilities, including cable and cell phone, furniture, transportation expenses, which can include your car payment, public transportation, gas, insurance, tolls, etc. When I bought that first car, you're going to have to consider groceries, clothing, entertainment, and student loan payments. It's important to think about all of your expenses now, as you most likely will not be able to rely on your parents anymore. Consider getting a roommate or two if that helps offset some of the expenses, and if that's a good choice for you. Make sure you've agreed on how the expenses are going to be split and that everyone is on the lease.
And that is a great point, Bill.
About that, right?
Yeah, so when I was doing counseling, I actually was counseling in a college town. So I had a lot of people that were students and they had roommate situations, and they would come in exceptionally frustrated and not sure what to do because they had signed in a lease, they had the roommate move in, they were splitting the cost, and then the roommate just decided to leave with no warning whatsoever. And because they weren't on the lease, the landlord wasn't going to go after the roommate. The landlord was going to go after the person that signed the lease. And they were in a big financial pickle because now they had to figure out how to add this additional expense in until they could find somebody else to help share them or until the lease was over. And that could be devastating to your credit, as well as the overall financial plan that you put in place.
Great, thanks. So you might also want to see if your parents might let you live at home for a little while so that you can save up some money. Remember, living with your parents will not be forever, but it can help you start your post-college off right and on the right foot financially. One of the biggest expenses you may have may be your student loans. So let's take a little bit to figure out how to manage those.
Great, thanks, Bill. So when you graduate or withdraw from school, you have a grace period before your loan payments are actually going to start. So subsidized and unsubsidized loans have a 6-month grace period. Perkins loans, they have a 9-month grace period. Perkins loans are no longer being issued, not since the 2017-18 school year, but you may have some of those if you started school before then. Again, interest is accruing on those unsubsidized loans even during that grace period. Once the grace period ends, we encourage you to choose the option that makes the most sense in your budget and long-term goals. So let's review some of your repayment options. So the standard repayment plan will be in effect unless you request otherwise. This plan is usually set up to pay off your debt over a 10-year period. Graduated plans start with a small amount and the payment automatically goes up every 2 years. Before choosing this option, you'll want to consider whether or not your income is likely to increase substantially in the future. An extended repayment plan stretches out how long you'll take to pay down your loans, which means significantly more interest. We'll see an example of that here in a minute. There are also a number of income-driven plans, which we'll also discuss here shortly. So if you really want to see what your student loan payments may look like, check out studentloans.gov. There is a payment estimator that you can access via the In Repayment tab and then use Loan Simulator. So you can either download your actual loan data or put in estimates of what you think you're going to borrow in the future. This example shows the options available for a student who borrowed approximately $30,000. So in this case, the standard 10-year payment results in a higher amount, $360 a month, but the least amount of interest. The extended fixed stay stays low, $206 for the payment, but notice that you're going to pay $18,000 more in interest over that 10-year window. There are several options to lower your payments based on your income and household size. First, there's income contingent repayment, ICR. There is, this is the only income-driven option for those Parent Plus loans. Please note that the loans must be consolidated first to be eligible for ICR. For students who went to school before 2011, there's income-based repayment, or IBR. Pay-as-you-earn was created for the newer borrowers, and recently revised Pay-as-you-earn also launched. This program will make income-driven plans available to more borrowers. So IBRinfo.org has some great resources explaining these options further. You can also click on the orange calculator on the top right to take you directly to the Department of Education Payment Estimator that we mentioned earlier. There's even an option to forgive your loans if you work for a nonprofit organization or government agency. For details about that, go to studentloans.gov to find the information for those programs.
Thank you, Dawn. With your student loans under control, hopefully you can leave some room for savings. Consider setting aside 10% or more of your earnings into savings. Here are some different savings goals to consider. One definitely is going to be emergency savings. You should strive to save 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in a separate account in the event that you lose your job. If you're in a specialized field or have less job stability, you're going to want to aim for a little bit more than 9 months, for about 9 months, as opposed to more than 3 to 6 months. And a lot of times, the emergency savings, it's not necessarily going to include 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. You might have a relatively minor expense, such as maybe having to replace the rim on your tire, which happened to me when I hit a pothole. And that might just cost a couple of $100, but if you have to do that, at least you don't have to worry about where that money is going to be coming from. Another savings goal, what might be your goals actually. And depending on your short-term or long-term goals, you may want to set up separate savings accounts to help you track your progress as you work toward achieving these goals. like a car payment or a down payment on a home or a new laptop or et cetera. This year is actually my 20th wedding anniversary, and my wife and I have planned to go on a big trip somewhere. Of course, the pandemic put the kibosh on that, but when we started planning for this trip 3 years ago, I started putting money into a separate account at my credit union just for that trip. And so now once the pandemic is over, we're going to have plenty of money for that, but that's something that we knew that was coming up, and so we started planning for it right away. And retirement is something that even when you're young, it's something you should be doing. It's never too early to start saving for retirement. Many employers offer plans, and some will even help fund your account either through a pension program or by matching your contributions. You can even open up your own retirement account. It's a good idea to speak with a financial planner to talk about your options ahead of time. And just as important as developing a savings habit, it's also important to develop a good credit habit. Credit, in a nutshell, is a way of having something now and paying for it later. If you're a student who's under 21 years old and you're applying for a credit card, you may be required to obtain a cosigner who is at least 21, and that person is most likely going to be a parent who has good credit, or if not, you may be required to prove that you have an independent source of income. While this may sound harsh, it's designed to protect you from getting into a lot of credit card debt before you even graduate from college. Using a credit card responsibly is one tool to build credit. And we're going to discuss responsible use of using credit shortly. But there are other ways you can help establish a good credit history as well. And some of the things you can consider are opening up a secure credit card. And what that is you're going to make a deposit, and that deposit is generally going to be the amount of your credit limit. So if you make a $500 deposit, you're going to have a $500 credit limit. A secured loan, also called a credit builder loan at a lot of banks and credit unions, is a loan where you make a deposit that's used to automatically repay the loan back, and it's specifically designed to build credit. Store and retail gas cards are usually the easiest to get, but they generally have a higher interest rate. They usually have higher interest rates in the 20 to 30% range. So if you get one of these cards, be sure to pay them off in full, but they are an excellent way to build credit. Other ways are piggybacking off of someone else's credit, and that can work, but you have to be cautious. You have two options when it comes to that. One is getting a co-signer for loans or joint accounts like a credit card. And in that scenario, both parties are legally liable for the debt. So if you plan to be a co-signer, you need to ask yourself the question, are you prepared to take over the loan or credit card payment if the other person doesn't make the payment? If you plan on using a co-signer, are you ready to jeopardize that relationship with your family member or friend if something goes wrong? Another option is being added as an authorized user on a card, and that's generally safer than co-signing or having a joint account holder. Basically, as an authorized user, you have the ability to use the card, but you're not liable for any charges. The activity on the account, however, can show up in your credit report and be reflected in your credit score. Credit can be expensive if it's not used wisely. As this slide shows, if you make a large purchase on credit and only make the minimum payment each month, the actual cost of the item you purchase will be significantly higher than the original purchase price. You can minimize this cost by making more than a minimum payment. So just think about it. In this scenario, that item you purchased for $5,000 is going to be paid. It's going to take you nearly 15 years to pay it off. And at that point, you're probably not even going to remember what the item was. You're probably not even going to have that item anymore. But it took you 15 years to pay it off, and you paid an extra $3,300 on that thing. When reviewing your application for credit, lenders will usually use a credit scoring model, and the factors used in the model are generally referred to as the 3 C's. And those C's are capacity, and character. Capacity looks at whether or not you have financial capacity to take on the credit you're seeking. In other words, the creditors are going to want to look at your income and your other financial obligations to determine if you can handle this additional debt. Capital is what creditors are going to look at what assets or resources you have. When evaluating capital, creditors will want assurances that a credit can be paid, that a debt can be paid for from your assets. And character is generally the most important aspect to the majority of creditors. This is how they're going to see whether or not you're going to be a good credit risk, because they want to know how you handle your other debt obligations. Creditors will often rely on credit reports to determine your character. They may also verify information provided to you on your application to determine if it's accurate or not. let's consider briefly what's considered in your credit report, as well as how your score is calculated. Your credit report is a record of your credit history. Credit reporting agencies keep and organize this information. The information is provided to them when you apply for credit by creditors with whom you do business and through public records. There are 3 major credit reporting bureaus in the United States, and they are TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. You won't know which credit union is going to may be used by a lender to make a decision, or in many cases, you're not going to know that. So for this reason, it's important to review all of your credit reports from all 3 of the credit bureaus basis. Through the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you are actually able to obtain 1 free copy of the report from each bureau once per year for free, and this can be done at annualcreditreport.com. And checking your credit report is going to make it easier for you to catch fraud and ID theft. Now, currently, because of COVID-19, one of the few good things that come out of COVID-19 is that you can actually obtain your report from each of the 3 bureaus for free once a week through April 2021 instead of once a year. So once again, go to annualcreditreport.com to review that.
Thank you, Bill. So a credit score is a 3-digit number that tries to quantify the likelihood of repayment. It is meant to reflect your credit risk. People often wonder what a good credit score is. Essentially, a good credit score is a number that matches the level of risk a lender is willing to accept for a particular loan or credit card. The lower the score, the higher the risk. So when you have a low score, you're going to pay more to borrow money. And when you have a higher score, you'll be offered a better interest rate, which will cost you less because the lender is not taking as much of a risk lending to you. I'm sure many of you have heard of Credit Karma. What they offer is not a true FICO score. There are other models. There's a Vantage model, which is based on a different scale. So make sure you know what you're looking at when you're saying, okay, this is my credit score, because the lender might be looking at a completely different number based on a different model. Your credit score is based on the factors we see on this slide. So payment history, 35%. Basically, are you paying your bills on time? Amount owed, 30%. So don't max out those credit cards. Length of credit history, 15%. Have patience. It does take several years for length of history to build up. Types of credit, 10%. I'd like to see a mix of loans and credit cards, but don't overdo it. And then new credit is an additional 10% of the score. And don't start applying for credit too often, because that, of course, can impact that score. So income, employment, where you live, race, age, gender, religion, national origin, and marital status are factors that are not included in determining your credit score. You may be anxious to boost your credit score by applying for a credit card. Before you do, let's review a few things. Without stable income, a credit card can easily become a crutch. It's less about the amount of income and more about the consistency. Even if you have limited income, as long as it's dependable and you live within your means, you're unlikely to incur debt. You can always overspend any income if you're not careful. Credit cards make it a lot easier to afford an unrealistic lifestyle.
Even with secure credit cards, it's important to have money in savings as a backup. You can't use the security deposit to pay the credit card unless you shut the card down. If you have no savings and a financial emergency happens, you might have to turn to a credit card, and that might cause you to get trapped in a cycle of debt.
Let's review some of the tips for using credit card wisely. So having money in savings as a backup so that you can handle an unexpected expense without getting into debt, using your credit cards is a great place to start.
Consider making only one charge a month and make this charge an automatic bill, such as internet or cell phone. The reason we suggest setting up only one automatic charge is that this way you only need to generate activity to build your credit score. It doesn't matter how much activity. One of the biggest myths about building credit is that a lot of people think you have to keep a balance to build your credit score, and that's not true. It's that activity. So they want to see payments. That's what they want to see to build that credit. In fact, the smaller the balance, the lower you as we've seen. This accounts for 30% of your credit score. Setting up automatic charges ensures that you will not succumb to temptation when it comes to overspending.
So the lower the utilization, the better. A general rule of thumb is to use less than 1/3 of your available credit. For small limits, this means only charging a very small amount.
And while paying off an account in full does not improve your credit score per se, paying on time is what really matters. Paying off the balance in full will help prevent any finance charges from accruing. It will also help you to live within your means without increasing debt.
And of course, check your credit report and scores regularly for accuracy. Make sure that you're utilizing the annualcreditreport.com for that.
So if you follow the steps we discussed, you will have excellent credit and minimal debt and a solid budget and substantial savings. This is really such an exciting time in your life with a lot of decisions to make. And while you're still young, it's important to look at each step as an opportunity to learn about personal finances and growth. The lessons we learned today will help set you up for a lifetime of success. And we really hope that this workshop has been helpful for you and it's going to lead you to the path of being intentional with your money choices. Finally, remember, you are welcome to conduct a free assessment with one of our financial wellness experts to review your credit report and receive tips tailored to your own situation. Also, please check out our website, www.greenpathREF.com, for more information about us and our financial education materials and tools. Thanks, and have a great day.